Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Overhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Elizabeth Geer. We've already had a conversation on the podcast, so if anyone wants to listen to that, you can go back in the shows and find it. And today we have a special episode all for Easter, for the resurrection, and for our recognition of what that can do for us to understand what that means in everyday life and the way we are seeing the world. So Elizabeth, I would like to open the floor for you to share about that and give us some insight that you've gained, and we can share other insights, and we'll see where this leads to. That's going to be great.
All right, sounds good. So I have been a Course in Miracles student and teacher, author, speaker since, I started reading it in 2012 in earnest. And what struck me as being raised Catholic, I'm a Reformed Catholic. I no longer attend church, but I have my own spiritual faith that I follow, of course, like I think most people are turning towards these days. But when I read the Course, it rang so true with me that Jesus in the Course said, the crucifixion wasn't the focus of my death, but my resurrection. And of course, in the Catholic faith, we focus on the crucifixion. And even at my job, people are saying, oh, he died for our sins. And no, he died to show us life, and that your sins don't affect that light within. And what I have gathered from my studying of the Course then is a whole new perspective where, because I always had trouble with, Jesus could walk on water. He could turn water into wine. He could heal people, raise people from the dead. Why didn't he defend himself? How did he let this happen to him? How did he let people brutalize him? And I thought, well, he willingly did, but why did he have to, and he didn't. We did it. We made that way for him. He didn't have to do that, but that is where the ego goes when it feels threatened. The power at the time, the authorities at the time were very against Jesus, and they, of course, tortured him, beat him, hung him from the cross. And that's what the Catholic faith focuses so hard on, is the process of his torture. Even wears little dead body and crucifixes around our necks and stuff. I honestly can't bear to wear any cross with his body hanging from it. And even the cross as a symbol has kind of fallen to the background for me. And I've taken more to wearing things that show light, like crystally stones that sparkle, because it's the light I want to focus on and not the cross that he died on, because the part that he was demonstrating is no matter what anybody said to him, what they did to him, he was going to live and he was going to rise again. And I feel like that's the theme of so many of our great stories, our great movies, our great books, is when someone rises from the depth of darkness and steps up and steps forward. And he demonstrated that. And the Course says no one need ever do this again, like this, to this degree, to this extreme, which also heartens me. I think, okay, no matter what I'm going through, Jesus did go through worse. Like, I don't know what he felt, but he promised we wouldn't have to do worse. So in my daily life, and when people talk about, Easter and the crucifixion, I just say, I focus on his resurrection, his light, the demonstration that no matter what abomination happens to us, and abominations happen to human beings every day. My worst thing is when children are abused, and I think they grow up into adults and they have to bear that cross. And I think, but they are strong. They're the strongest souls I know to go through that and have to process that and learn to resurrect from that. And every day we have tiny resurrections from any negative thought, which comes from the ego, where we feel like we want to lash out at someone or judge them or attack, even in small ways where we're just thinking, a negative thought towards them, because our thoughts are things. And what you focus on is what you want to grow. So if you're focusing on the negative, or you're focusing on these judgmental thoughts where how you dislike this or you dislike that, those are tiny crucifixions of others. And so it's tough because it comes without even thinking. The practice then for me has been to become awake and to be aware of those thoughts. And it isn't, as the Course says, you needn't be perfect and not have those thoughts ever again. It's just to catch them when you notice them and to not want them. So if I find myself gossiping in a negative way about a coworker or family member, and sometimes it isn't gossip, you're observing a fact. This happened. This person said this, but it's the feeling behind it that gives it its manifestation, that gives it its power. And so if you can say things and observe things, but not judge them as good or bad, just saying, this happened, and all the momentum is taken out of it with the emotion, you're not crucifying. And you can feel when you're crucifying with a crucifying thought, because it doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't carry light and love and kindness, compassion, or empathy, I can observe negative things with empathy and talk about them with people. You shouldn't avoid things because it makes you feel, negative. But if you can talk about them and still have empathy, um, that takes away the crucifying power. You don't want to nail anybody because you're doing it to yourself. We're all one self. So if you can have compassion for another, you're having compassion for yourself. You'll experience more compassion. Same thing with peace, love, joy, abundance. And sometimes it's really hard because it just is. We're human beings. And a go-to thought that I have is that God is constantly calling everyone home. And I think even you, whoever you may be, whoever I might be struggling with in the moment, I think, and yet God calls them constantly. The same as me, the same as the most beloved person. We are all constantly being called to God, and God wants to love that person and does love that person and wants me to love that person too. Even if it's to say, I accept that I can't accept this. And I don't know what they've been through. I don't know what shoes they've walked in. I don't think I'd want to walk a second in their shoes if it's something really difficult to accept. And I just have to remember that even God is calling them, and they're being called all the time, even if they can't hear it. And that, for some reason, gives me peace knowing that, well, God is calling them. They're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. It's my judgment that's the problem. I'm the problem with how I perceive them. So resurrection is every time you resurrect from those thoughts. You're resurrecting yourself when you say, I don't want to think this. And sometimes it's a runaway train. You can't get out of it. But if you can at least say, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. Give it time. Give it a minute. Give it an hour. Give it a day or two. You will come out of it and you'll realize, I'm so grateful I noticed. It's the sleeping unconscious reactions where you're not aware of how you're hurting others, even if it's only in your mind and they never hear a thought. You never speak a thought. You're hurting yourself with that lower vibration of attack and crucifixion. And the more time you can spend in the observer and seeing what you're doing, even in your own mind, quietly, no one ever hearing you, because minds are joined and the Course is repetitive on that point. So it's sort of mind exercise, practicing resurrection from those thoughts. Um, it, it, it's at some point then miracles become automatic, as the Course says in the first chapter. Miracles are those resurrection moments where you stop yourself, or you automatically don't judge. You automatically have compassion and mercy and understanding. So that's when, in my mind, what I have understood to be when miracles are automatic, it is also the same thing as resurrection is automatic. You resurrect from those thoughts. So kind of long-winded, but one thing led to another. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think one of the things about the resurrection is that it shows that we are not, that spirit is life, not the body.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is spirit cannot be tarnished. And of course, the miracle says nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. I think that's also the secret to the resurrection, or
Yes,
the obvious truth about it. Let's put it that way.
Yes, and the greatest demonstration of I am not a body was Jesus's resurrection from the cross. We are not bodies. Nothing can hurt us. They can beat you, taunt you, crown you with thorns, nail you with nails. Doesn't matter what they do. You aren't that body. And somewhere in the course it says, can you be hurt? Well, bodies can. Bodies do get hurt all the time, but not your eternal self. That is indestructible and eternal. And yes, absolutely.
So what the course, or Jesus emphasizes in the course, that you cannot be hurt. So in truth, you're not hurt. It's the body maybe gets hurt, but you're not getting hurt. So he says he didn't suffer. Now, many of the depictions of Jesus in the Easter time, all these depictions of the story show how there's all this suffering of the body, and how there's so much suffering, and one associates it with suffering of the mind, and all these injustice and all these things that are happening when you think about it. And he says, and of course, what was going on in my mind at all, right? And the yoke wasn't heavy; it was light. You can carry it easily if you join me and make the same decisions I made. That it's not a burden, and he also says it was his last unnecessary journey. So he's saying that even though he can use it as a lesson, he wouldn't have had to give us that lesson in that way. He could have done it differently, but he chose to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a very important definition of the resurrection. It's a choice to the way you demonstrate it, but the resurrection is actually not a choice, because that's real. We actually are eternal. Mm-hmm. So the resurrection is only a story within the dream of exile, in which it is necessary because we have this story of death, of suffering, of all this, and of dark thoughts and so on. So yes, then that resurrection becomes a story of hope and so on. But in truth, hope isn't even necessary, because everything is settled already. And that's, I think, what Jesus was demonstrating with the resurrection, is that we are already at home. And now I think what's so fascinating is that we are given the freedom to have this dream of exile and to take our time. There's no rush of how fast you need to come home. It's not like you're being called, come home. You have to come home right away. No, you're welcome to come home anytime you choose, at your own pace and in whatever way you feel fit. But the answers will always be the same. You are holy, you are innocent, and you are at home already.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think for many, and I've heard stories of people that have awoken suddenly and they could see the light in everybody they saw and they were amazed. I've heard of those experiences, and but the Course says it's gentle and it won't shock you or give you more than you can handle that way. And so I think that awakening is kind of a gradual, and it's an ongoing, and you have more awakened moments than others. And when you said, Jesus what was going on in his mind wasn't suffering. And in my day-to-day life, I think of that because that is true. And I've heard, it's in the course, and he wasn't suffering because that's not where his mind was focused on the pain and the agony and what people were saying and hurt feelings and hurt body. Um, so, when you're in a work situation with coworkers and stuff is happening, some people get very upset by the same situation that something I'm thinking I'm not upset at all. I'm relieved or I'm happy for this other person to be taking care of this or doing this. And it's all in how you choose to perceive. Are you going to perceive through the eyes of Christ or through the eyes of the ego? And of course, Christ had Christ's vision and he had mercy for us and didn't, and that helped, whatever, that helped turn his mind so he wasn't suffering. And there's so many situations in life where the same response or the same situation is responded to so differently by other people, where it depends on how you take it. How are you going to perceive this? Can you have mercy instead of, like I come right back to it, mercy instead of judgment? You will have less suffering if you can perceive the situation through the eyes of light and love. And yes, it 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 shifts your life. Synchronicities start to happen. You feel in alignment with the laws of love, which are we are one. What you do to another, you do to yourself. Your suffering is your own doing because it's your perspective that causes suffering. Um, yes, you can stub your toe. Yes, you can be, hurt by others physically, but it's your perspective that 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 gives you the experience of peace and joy or suffering and fear. Um, so yes, that it comes all the way down to the day-to-day little thoughts that pop in and out of our heads to our big experiences. I had a surgery recently. I had, I guess I can share this. There's no reason I can't, I guess, but I had some precancerous cells in my breast tissue. And 2.5 weeks ago, I had that removed. And the doctor said that I tolerated the surgery very well. And he thanked me for my whatever. I'm not sure how he put it, but I said, so there's other ways to react? Like, what do people do? Do they scream? Because I had the first biopsy was local anesthetic. The major surgery, then they decided to take all of it out. I was under anesthesia, but for the biopsy, he was commenting on what a good patient I was, and I said, so is there another way to respond besides to lay there and take deep breaths and chit chat with the nurse holding my hand? And he said, well, we get some wild ones on the table. They move around and they can be very vocal. So it kind of surprised me that people would react that way. But they do. There's fear with having these processes and procedures done to our body. And I just trusted the process. And I thought, well, I'm in good hands. These people know what they're doing. They're trained. And this is supposed to happen. So I'm going to be as graceful and calm as possible. And that I had virtually no pain. So apparently other people feel pain, but I had virtually none. I had some discomfort, but nothing that I felt like I wanted to jump up and run away. So, yeah, it's your reaction, your perspective, your thoughts that are running through your head. And who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to listen to, fear or love? And that changes your whole experience.
Coming back to one of the topics we started with, you're saying Catholic, and you've been able to reconcile with belief, with Christianity, in other words, or the Christian faith. And I think that's one of the things that A Course in Miracles is really good at, is reconciling us with whatever faith we may have or whatever views we may have learned that didn't feel right until we found a new way of seeing it. And so I think there's a faith as a choice rather than as something you believe that isn't true, right? Like many people would say, okay, belief means it's something that you don't know whether it's true or not, right? But when you come to the way A Course in Miracles shares about it, you get to realize that it's not about the question of whether it's true or not, or whether it's not a choice to recognize it, what is actually there. So it's not something that you have to fight for, or you don't have to prove to anyone. And I think that's the beauty of the reconciliation, is that you no longer need to prove anything. You can actually enjoy the fruits of your decision of deciding the resurrection in the sense of peace of mind and invulnerability and being holy and sinless. Because to be honest, the greatest addiction that we all have is guilt. And so the resurrection basically is another way of putting it. You need not feel guilty, because it's like in many Christian circles, when speaking of He washed away our sins, this and that, right? But it's not. He's saying that's not what it's about. You already are sinless. You already are holy. I'm just showing you in one way of many ways, because this was the last unnecessary journey, because all dreams of exile are unnecessary, right? All demonstrations are unnecessary, in other words.
Right.
So we don't even have to demonstrate anything. And that's what I think is so amazing when you think of the thought of your only purpose is to accept the atonement for yourself. I mean, oh my God, what does that mean? Okay, I don't have to tell anyone what to believe. I don't have to make them believe it. I don't have to get anything from anyone that they don't want to give. Or if they want to give it, I don't even, I can only, I could accept that there is a wholeness about who I am that is unchangeable.
Yes. You know, I meditate daily, and it's evolved. It used to be this long process, a guided process. I have several different guided meditation saved to my phone. And now I've just come to a point where I will sit outside and listen to the birds. If the weather isn't cooperative, I'll sit quietly in the house. Maybe I'll play some quiet music. And all I do, because you are absolutely spot on, the only thing we have to do is extend our love to every piece of creation. One of the recent course workbook lessons, the words were your love and God's love extends to all creation, every aspect of creation. So I think, what is every aspect of creation? That means the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknown. There are planets and worlds and galaxies and dimensions out there I don't even know about. And I'm going to extend my love all the way out as far as infinity, as far as God will let me join him, which is everything. And so I'll lay there and just slowly work my way through my own body and my family and people I am aware of, and make peace with extending. I know anyone who triggers me in any way. I just know that when we're not in our bodies, we are part of this unified field of love. And none of this is true. It's all an illusion and a dream. So I'm going to extend my love as though it's true. And even though I can't see it with my physical eyes. And so I just keep on expanding and expanding. And by the end, my whole being is just expanded and at peace and joining in love with every aspect of creation, whatever that entails, whatever that means. And that's all we have to do. That's all we have to do. Just like you said, we don't have to go out and write books and be speakers and do a lot of work. We don't have to evangelize. Um, we're just asked to love. And it's like being a quiet warrior for God, which warrior in the most loving sense of the word, meaning your battle is to constantly remember to extend love to everybody. And it's just you. Everything is just you. It's only ever been you. It's only ever been me. And we are us, are them, are they, are I, are. It comes down to where you hear that profound phrase, God is, and he'll say, I am, because everything is God is. And that's all we have to try and remember with every breath and extend that through that remembrance. And we need not do another thing but live our day-to-day life. If you clean toilets or serve people food or doesn't matter what you do, or take care of kids at school, go about those mundane tasks. But when you do them with that mindset, they become miraculous acts. Um, we see these people that seem, famous, and they're on TV, and the Tony Robbinses of the world, that are getting, drawing thousands to arenas to hear them speak. I feel like so many of us think that that's where we need to get to, and we don't. The powerful ones are the ones of us in numbers, quietly going about our lives, quietly loving, quietly forgiving, quietly letting go of all forms of guilt and attack, whether it's on ourselves or others, and embracing the atonement. We are one. And I'm going to just live my life with that oneness in mind as much as possible. And the more you do it, the more miracles you work, because that is the miracle, to remember that, because our eyes tell us the exact opposite. Our eyes show us separation at every turn. And, um, remembering that in the energetic field, that the separation isn't true. Um, it is an effort until it becomes automatic.
The other side is that whatever way you choose, you are reaching everyone. Because
Yes.
if you're one, you're reaching everyone. So to be a speaker is just as legitimate to be an author.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
to speak whatever needs speaking, and to write
Yes.
whatever needs writing.
Yes.
The beauty of there is no one who is special. So you can actually come from where you're at, because that is exactly what is needed.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you need to be to reach a certain goal or to this or that is ego.
Yeah.
In order to speak or to speak up or
Yep.
to share.
And
So
sometimes oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Catherine wanted to say something, so go ahead, Catherine. You can unmute now. If that's no longer the case, then we'll continue. Okay. Yeah, so the power of actually being willing to speak, to write, to share is also important. And I think anyone who feels that that's for them, you should do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, absolutely. Follow your calling, follow your heart's joy and love to be of service. And it can be a single word to a stranger on the street, and it can be a full length book that you're publishing by yourself or having published, or you could be Tony Robbins. All levels are needed, and because there is no level, like you said, everything has its place. And even though the ego wants us to believe that big things that appear big are more important, and that single word on the street is meaningless, um, it's all the same, because it's working towards the greater goal of being aware of our unity, our atonement. And totally agree that all types of extending love are needed. And I can't even tell you how many times I've been uplifted by simple things or something, just a meme on social media that somebody wrote, and it was so uplifting. I thought, oh my gosh, that's profound. Um, I um, I read a book by, oh, what is his name? I can't remember. But this gentleman, he founded One Mind Valley, and that's a thing on Gaia. But he's now helping millions, and he started out by being the only person in a self-help class. And the person hosting the class was disappointed. There was just one person who signed up for their class, but they gave it their all. They gave this individual the whole class, and it was like a 2 or 3 day event. And that one person went on to be the founder of One Mind Valley, which is an online social media that is offering classes and books and teachings to millions. So if you help one person, you don't know what that one person will go on to do either. Your tiny act, had that person said, you know what, you're the only one who signed up, here's your money back, I'm not going to bother, I'm a failure. I'm so glad they did it, because they helped that one person who went on to help millions and millions of people online and through their spiritual work that they're sharing of other people. And you just never know. There's such a big plan. We just got to love our love and do our part. And you don't know what other ripples that's causing out in the universe.
When you're in a job and you can get the idea that it's not for anyone, it's not doing anything, you're unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
But every single thought, every single decision that we make that is important.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision to accept the atonement for oneself is very important. And even if it means I'm going to be lashing out again and again and learn it that way, okay, until I actually learn it, or I learn it because I'm lashing out and I'm, like you said, observing it, or I'm not observing it, whatever, I'm getting stuck in it. The thing is that we are actually willing to go through whatever processes we need to, because we made up this place, so we are going to react to it in one way or another. And we're going to another, because we're continuing to make it. So the beauty of the being allowed to take your time to make up whatever you want to make up,
Mm-hmm.
until you value who you are. And what do we need to make up in order to feel valued? If we make up something that we think is outside of ourselves to value ourselves, that won't last.
Yep.
So the beauty is we are some would say you're unmaking things, but the Course in Miracles says we're always extending love. Even when we don't know it, we're always creating, in other words, as the Course in Miracles calls it. So, yes. And that what we are creating actually continues to exist, because we're taking time and lashing out or making up things that make people feel uncomfortable, ourselves feel uncomfortable, or animals feel uncomfortable, or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
We are not losing that ability to extend the love, to create. And so it's important to be willing to see it as something that is allowed to be in whatever way it is. And that's the only way I think we can actually accept the resurrection for ourselves, is one decision at a time.
Yep, totally agree. Because, as I gather from the Course, everything is a lesson in love. Every breath, every moment, we're choosing love or fear, or love or judgment. And yeah, we can take as long as we want to keep choosing that, and learn that the one choice brings us healing and peace, and the other choice makes us very uncomfortable. And, it just comes down to, do I want to feel that way or not? And we are in charge of our thoughts. We are in charge of how we feel. We are in charge of how we respond to what we see with our physical eyes, and what we believe to be true, and that we aren't bodies, and that we are love and light. And when these physical bodies are not part of our experience, that we are in this unified field of love, and everything has a purpose. When I have rough days, I think, oh, I had a lot of triggers today. And I think when you're no longer triggered by something, it's healed. You've forgiven it, or you've found a way to move into that place of love and acceptance and empathy and compassion, and the day tends to smooth out. And I just think there's no outside force trying to harm me. It's just, what am I focusing on? And that's true for politics. There are some very big feelings around American politics. And I feel like I'm navigating those waters because there are people on pro or against. And I just say, I am for whatever the highest outcome is, whatever the greatest good is, whatever the most positive outcome is. And I don't know how that process looks. I don't know who will be participating in that process, but it is all me because we're all one. So I opt for the stance of, well, we don't know the outcome of things. We don't know how this will play out. And I'm trusting this process because I trust the Holy Spirit's guidance. I trust that we all carry the Holy Spirit within us, and we are the ones who label things good or bad. We give those labels through our ego, because truly everything is love. And when you move into that, when you stop fighting against and you move with it and into it, the wind comes out of the people's sails that are all poofed out and feeling like they need to defend or attack or condemn, and you know what? They're okay too. They're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. We are okay at the beginning of time. We're okay now, and we'll be okay at the end of time, because that'll be the end of the ego, and we'll realize our eternal one self. And it's kind of like you said in the very beginning, we're already there. We're already healed. We're already perfect. And I just have to keep reminding myself when people are confrontational about things that trigger big feelings, that it doesn't matter what the physical body is saying or doing. The inner light is already perfect. And it's having this experience for you to learn to love. And when you put your love into something, it changes everything. Things work out in a way that are miraculous, which is the Course in Miracles. So, yeah.
It's something we tend to get riled up about, is when things get heated and hard. Yes. And it's the resurrection isn't saying stop doing it. You don't have to.
Yep.
You can choose differently. It's not saying you have to choose differently or anything. There's no judgment in that. And that's what so funny, when you have all these questions of, why isn't God helping me? Why isn't God in my life? Why isn't there a higher power that is solving everything for me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the answers could be that you're given choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And is it really a problem? Is this really, you've labeled this as a problem, but is this really, and even if you're hanging from a cross, is that really a problem? You're already perfect. You're already love and light, and you aren't that body. So yeah, You are absolutely right. It's perspective and choice, the power of choice. And in the course, it said, if all your problems were solved for you, then God, Jesus, would not be acknowledging our power. If our power could be superseded by God and overturned and say, no, I'm not allowing you this or this or this experience, then that would be diminishing us as powerful spiritual beings in our own right. The only thing we're not allowed to truly do is separate. That's the only thing we cannot do, because God is everywhere and everything, and that's impossible to not be what we were created as, which is a part of God and part of God's Holy Son. That's the only law, that you can't actually separate or depart from love, that you'll always be a part of that, no matter what you think or see or choose to experience. But everything else is up for experience, and it won't be stopped, but you can shift yourself. You can shift yourself and side with the greatest power of, love, which is the greatest power of all, which is love, and experience a much easier time. Because this is a tough place. We aren't brought into the world being inherently aware of our oneness and love and light. We're taught the opposite. But I think we're moving towards a global resurrection, the Great Awakening, that the spiritual speed up that, so many are talking about. And I think it's mentioned in the Course, the Awakening, and that is our resurrection as humanity. And I don't think there's anyone who hasn't been feeling something coming and happening. And I think we're in the middle of it. It's happening. It isn't a future event. We're in the process. And it's discussions like these, and the beloveds who listen to this podcast and take it in and join us in that, tidal wave of change for the good. And so when children are born, that is one of the first things we teach them, is that they aren't their body, and that we're here to extend love to one another and grow in our knowledge and experiences of who we are in truth.
It's a very important thing, is children also have choice.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have choice.
Yep.
And that's why also in the children's right, it says children have the right to participate in choices that have to do with their world or their experiences, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a very important shift in the way one sees children that has been happening over the years now. And one of the symbols of that shift is the Children's Rights Charter.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more, of course. But that's one of the symbols of a change in the way we see children as humanity, and that means a change in the way we see ourselves, because so the language that we have is a language of love and truth, right? And no matter how often we misuse the symbols or the views for separation, it doesn't make it real. So like you were saying, it's so beautiful that we can choose, but we cannot change who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know if, I mean, you were saying we're a part of God. I think it's more like we are one with God.
Yeah.
And we are, and being immersed in that. And so it says in A Course in Miracles, we are an extension of our source, of the parent of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being an extension, what does that mean? You can't extend your hand you can stretch your hand out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still your hand. It may be it may be reaching further out. It's still your hand. So, so we are not separate. We are not And we're not just a part, we're actually the whole. Each one of us is the whole. We all are the whole. And I think that's something that I've come to understand, that it's different. I used to have a time where I was like always, oh, I'm a part of the whole. So I have to respect the other parts, because otherwise I will act mean, or I can't feel loved or whatever. But I think I feel a lot better with being the whole, because then I cannot harm myself either.
Right.
In truth. And I
Yeah.
cannot harm anyone else either in truth. There is no, I'm actually not harming myself, and I'm not harming anyone else. There is no one to harm. And so this dream of exile isn't actually doing any harm.
Right. And it's the, you are one, but you are all in one. It's this strange experience when we're in these bodies that we feel like we're just individuals, but we're within a greater whole, and we are that whole. I don't know where it says it in the course, but it's like the sum of the parts is not greater than the whole. It's something like that. Each part contains the whole. Each part is the whole. And there is in my first book, the Holy Spirit gave me the example of, think of a puzzle. Each individual piece is its own little shape. But if each piece doesn't fit into the puzzle, there's a greater picture that you're a part of. You're your own individual piece, but you're also part of that great big picture. And the puzzle isn't complete without that piece's awareness. So when you're aware of it, you're seeing the whole picture. And but we're also the individual pieces, but we aren't individuals. We contain the whole. I'm not even sure if that's making sense, but it's such a hard concept when we're in this perspective of individuality on the planet. But you are absolutely right that each piece contains the whole. Yeah. Just like, each finger is a finger, but it's all part of the one body. And what you do to a finger, you're also doing to your head, your shoulder, your legs. Everything is affected if you do anything to any part of your body, even though this can be vastly different. Your hair is different from a toenail, but, and a heart is different from, your skin. But do anything to one part, you do it to the whole.
One of the things A Course in Miracles also says is, no thought leaves its source. Mm-hmm. So devaluing anything is actually devaluing the whole. Mm-hmm. Anything. So that's why it's so important to take children seriously, or the or imagination and fantasy, whatever we're labeling it as, spiritual sight, to take it seriously, not in the sense that we have to, if it's scary, to join being scared or the fear, but in the sense that we are willing to allow that to show itself in whatever way it wants to, because we need a holistic language to express ourselves. We need the whole scope of what our mind can do in order to communicate and express and extend love. Mm-hmm. And so the more we allow, the better we are capable of being aware of love's presence, as A Course in Miracles describes it.
Yep, exactly. That's beautiful. You are exactly right. Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning embracing everything, right? That there's more than you see, there's more than you think, there's more than you thought you could think, and so on and so forth. And so recognizing that we can extend love to all is extending love to ourselves as well, or not as well. We're actually extending to ourselves, because there is no other.
Yes.
But at the
And what,
same time, it may feel like we are extending to something else.
hmm
But it's not about this satisfying feeling that I'm extending to others. It's about the feeling itself. The extending itself is what is the joy, and not because I'm so generous or because I'm so nice or because of this, because feeling smug about being so generous and nice and so forgiving is not the same as extending love.
yes,
So the resentment,
there's the
yes,
selfishness, which is the small self, and then there's the self-fullness with a capital S, where you feel full in yourself, your one self, versus the selfishness of the little s for self. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so the
because you
motivation
get
for
into that.
extending, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one can get into this idea that one is so wonderful because one is doing certain things. And that's not what A Course in Miracles is teaching in the resurrection. Christ isn't even saying, I'm proud that I showed you that life is real and that I continued. No, he doesn't even say that.
No.
And he even says, yeah, I didn't even suffer and I didn't even have to do this. And you
Right.
don't have to do it even.
Right.
So no one is um, required to suffer, to sacrifice, as A Course in Miracles, he puts it in A Course in Miracles as well. There's no need for sacrifice at all. So if you think that when you're giving whatever you think it is to someone else and you feel like it's a sacrifice, then you're certainly thinking in a way that is harmful to yourself or to the whole. Not really harmful, but harmful in the sense of the experience.
Yes.
It just doesn't feel good as it
Yes.
could, right?
Yes. And yep.
It's
And
not
if,
that you're doing something wrong by giving something. It's about
what
the,
is your motivation?
yeah.
Yep. What is the motivation? Are you motivated by ego or spirit? And you'll know right away if it's ego because you will feel a sense of sacrifice. You'll feel a sense of loss or a sense of being put out, um, rather than feeling an increase in love.
And that's
Yeah.
why, so A Course in Miracles is also basically in its description of the resurrection, how he describes it there, is he was not a sacrificial lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And that image has been on the heads of the sacrificial lamb, of Jesus being a sacrificial lamb. And he's saying, no, that's not the intention that I had. And yeah, you can see this very differently. I certainly did. This is what he's saying, right? I didn't see it that way.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And that was a process of undoing for me with my Catholic upbringing, and the whole big focus was on how Jesus suffered and how he was, killed, and very little on the resurrection. We had Easter Sunday service, he's risen, and that's the end of it. When the whole celebration should have been after that, of celebrating how he overcame death and showed us that, you can do things to the body, but it's not real. Life goes on, and I'm going to love you no matter what. And you don't need to suffer either. And it's all in our choice of how we're going to perceive our experiences, and or let them go. Some experiences are quite horrific and fear filled, especially for children, as we're talking about that. My heart goes out to children who are abused in any way, and animals too. And that they will have that to forgive, they will have that to overcome, they'll have that cross to deal with and resurrect from in their own experience, in their own mind, and how they choose to perceive it. Um, and as a human race, as a planet, we are resurrecting. Things are shifting. We're seeing more and more, conversations like this. We're seeing more and more people stepping forward into the light and sharing the truth of our love and light and our unity and our atonement. And it's, it's just, I think the future for me is very hopeful and positive, and I look forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Yeah, and I'm very happy we were able to speak about this. And I know that I certainly was scared about having this conversation because of fears and lashing outs and stuff that come in my mind. On the other
Yeah.
hand, you are supposed to speak from where you're at, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to share from a place of having fears of and insecurities and whatever else, because that's where I'm at. And
And
so
that's
thank you for
beautiful.
doing that as well,
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes. Thank you
And
for
if there's
having me.
anything, yeah, you're welcome. Is there anything you'd like to share that I didn't ask you about?
No, I loved what you had to share, and for me, it was spot on, and I fully support, uh, all of our endeavors to resurrect from our fears. And it is our human struggle. And I'm so honored and grateful that you had me on the show. It's kind of last minute planning. It just came up and it worked out perfectly for my schedule. And I just think that's the hand of spirit on the situation. And again, thank you for providing this platform and this opportunity to speak about this. And I'm very honored, and it was so good to see you again, Monica.
I enjoyed it as well. So for all of you who are watching and listening, or in whatever way you're interacting with this, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And let us celebrate together that we are at home. This is so beautiful. And if you want to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to me. If you know someone who would be a good fit, you might tell them about it. And please let people know about the podcast so they can listen to these conversations as well. Blessings to you all. Until next time.
Thank you.